listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin. To master a higher frequency for a new state of mind. Once you walked in a forest of splendor in which everything you did and everything you thought was aligned. It is possible at this time to begin to return to the old knowledge. Intuitive healer and manifestor Julia Griffin is here to talk about this unique time in history when all sentient beings, animals, plants, trees, and the earth are intent on creating this change. The wolves awakened her to the most incredible light, which opened gifts and brought knowledge that she longs to share. You are creators, and you are born to be creators of beauty, possibility, and joy. Join Julia on a journey into a beautiful and magical world where amazing possibilities exist. Let us help open the door. The Power of Inspiration and Awakening with Julia Griffin starts right now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Griffin, and you're listening to The Power of Inspiration and Awakening on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour and let us help you experience a higher vibration and a new state of mind. For those of you who don't know me well, I awakened with wolves. When I met a wolf, it talked to me the same way that I'm talking now, only it would have been in my mind. They taught me to read the energy of the heart so I can intuitively hear plants, animals, and the thoughts of people. I became an intuitive healer as a result, and I write about this, and you can find me at onetrueself.com, onetrueself.com. I'm really excited about today's guest, Normandi Ellis. She's an esteemed author, and we'll discuss her book, The Ancient Tradition of Angels, which relates to the mysteries of angels throughout many cultures. It's a fascinating book. If you've ever read about any of it on any level, you would love it. I think it's going to take me about 5 reads to completely get all of it. It's that good. Let me tell you about Normandi. Normandi Ellis is a spiritual minister, astrologer, and certified clairvoyant medium through the Indiana Association of Spiritualists. Her 14 books include the spiritual classic, Awakening Osiris, translations from the hieroglyphs found in the Book of the Dead. She offers clairvoyant circles, metaphysical classes, and private consultations, phone or in person. She's a founding partner of Two Ladies Travel Company. So welcome, Normandi. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Good to see you, Julia. Thank you for having me.
It's an honor. I can't believe all that you've written. You're very prolific. I think angels are a subject that interests everyone. And so I wanted to ask you, I'm familiar with your incredible work with Egypt and how much research you've done, but what caused you to write and research angels in such depth?
Well, I've always been fascinated with angels. And Egypt just became sort of my niche. But as I became a spiritualist minister, I moved into Camp Chesterfield, and there's a place on the grounds where there's a trail of religions, Vardhamana from Jainism and Mohammed from Islamic, and Abraham Jewish, and Buddha and Lao Tzu, Jesus, Osiris, the whole gamut of spiritual teachers was there. And as I was teaching a class in comparative religions and at Chesterfield, I began to see that the angels had their wings, we'll say, in every single tradition. And no matter what the philosophy of that particular tradition was, the angels were the messengers. Angels always come as messengers. They always come as healers. And there's no I don't know, there's just no way to deny that these angels exist because people have seen them everywhere. Now, when I decided to get a degree in comparative religion, they told me I couldn't do any books on Egypt for my dissertation because I'd already done them all.
Well,
So they
that
said,
limited things.
yeah, they said, pick something that interests you. And I said, okay, angels do. And I got that interest through studying Egypt, where the boss souls or the winged creatures with the human face, and they are the Egyptian equivalent of angels.
Well,
So
it's fascinating to me because I think for anyone who starts to study spiritual beliefs, you very quickly see that there are some things that are found in everything. Like, for example, the indigenous people have a flood. They have a perfect man and woman who have twins. One is good, one is bad. I mean, those are just very simple examples, but you start to see that it's in everything.
that's right. That's right. And I think that that's an important thought because that brings me to one of my fascinations with angels. People always ask me, what do you think about the fallen angels? You know, and you were just talking about the twins. And the Zoroastrians call their deities and their angelic forms that follow them good thought and bad thought. So they are ways of thinking about the world, and that they are aspects of consciousness, which is not consciousness, just not judge this is good, this is bad. It simply is. And
Mhm.
the fallout is how you use what you're thinking.
Right.
So,
And what's the concentration?
yes,
Which one are you having more of? Because that tends to affect your fate and your destiny.
that's right. That's right. And so that sort of links to the idea that an angel is, it's been said that angels are no more than a thought form. And so they are.
Right. So one thing that fascinated me is you trace angels really far back on a cultural level. How far do you think that they go back, that belief?
Well, I would not be able to answer how far they go back because we don't know how far the sacred texts go back.
Right.
We have relatively recent intimations of angels like Gabriel or Jibril in the Islamic tradition, but the um, angels predate whatever we know about um, any religion. They are called in ancient Egypt the shining ones.
Which they certainly are, if you've ever seen one. So yeah.
Yes,
So they go back further than we know, but they've just sort
yeah.
of always been here. That's a wonderful answer. I actually love that. So, for people who haven't experienced angelic energy or studied angels, why should they matter to people who haven't had that experience?
Well, a lot of people say, should I pray to angels? And I say, no. It is not necessary to pray to an angel. You pray to the deity of your particular religious tradition, and the angels appear as the messengers from that divine being to you. They carry your prayers up to the highest energies, and they bring directives down from the heaven world, the cosmos, and bring that energy down to you. So it's good to be familiar with angels. I was talking to someone else the other night, and he was raised a Catholic, and was telling me that he was saved in a fire in his house by someone that he thought was from the fire department. They had the whole mask and everything on him, woke him up, and then he ran upstairs, woke his parents, and they got out of the house as it was, falling down. And he said his father went up to the fire chief afterwards and said, I want to thank you for waking my son so that he could get us out of the house. And the fire chief said, Sir, we weren't in your house. We just now got here.
Right.
And so that obviously was an angel dressed in a form that the boy would recognize and believe. And so, yeah, that and what that leads me to think is that he was raised Catholic. He was raised in a tradition that was surrounded by angels. And the more that you contemplate angels, like there are similar stories about the Mormons and incidents in which they were saved because they pray and believe in angels. And I think the more you think about them, the more likely they are to come up and down and give you messages.
I agree. And I mean, it must have been 20 years ago, but I remember it was a whole page in the Atlanta Constitution. And there had been, I was unaware of it, there had been some terrible plane wreck outside of Atlanta. It had crash landed, but
Uh-huh.
about 30 people lived. But all of those people had said there was this tall, blonde woman who sat with them and held their hand and told them they would be all right. But of course, the woman was never found. And they all said, oh, she must have been an angel. I was praying for help, and then this woman appeared.
Yes,
I thought, wow, what a story, because those are 30 people who simultaneously had the same experience.
yes, yes. Excuse me.
There are not many things like that in the newspaper, so that was pretty fascinating. I thought, for me, my first big encounter with angels is that a friend of mine was opening a bookstore, and this woman, Alana, who became a friend, she invited us all to come to an opening party. But before the party, she prayed and we meditated, and I can remember feeling light. And the next morning when I woke up, I felt like healthy, strong, excited, hopeful about life. And my friend who had gone with me called and said, what happened last night? I just woke up feeling great. And I thought about it and I thought, Alana called in angels. And that's when I realized they're accessible to us, because it was
Right,
just like waking up and feeling like you were 14 again or something, like the whole world is waiting for you.
right. I think that's one of the things that's so fascinating about this particular time of year is that the stories of the angels that appear bringing messages um, are always more prominent in our minds during the Christmas season. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is that the Christmas tree itself is the Jacob's ladder. It's all the lights are the angels coming up and down the tree. And as the Christ child manifests into human form, but there's this single star above the tree. And that again links to the story of Osiris in the tree of Lebanon and Isis being the star above the tree.
Well,
It's
tell us
got
more
old
about that.
resonances. Oh, well, I think it's kind of interesting this time of year. If you go out at midnight and you look straight up, Sirius is right above the
Right.
horizon. And usually the trees that you see, like the branches of fir trees, are like the pillars of Osiris, the Jed pillar, the levels of physical and astral and emotional and spiritual. And at the very top is that tree's star. You know.
Right.
Now I like to think of the ladders to heaven, the ones that Jacob dreamed about, and he saw the angels coming up and down this ladder. And that would be seeing them as beings of light coming up
Mhm.
and down. And that's very much related to the tree of life and the Kabbalah. Each angel being a quality
Yeah, it
of,
rules a sphere of consciousness.
that's right, each angel rules a sphere of consciousness. And so if we really contemplate the Christmas tree as we've set it up in our house, it's there for us to look at every night, to think about, to um, call upon the energies of angels. I'm not saying to pray to them, but to call upon and invoke the energy of their clarity.
Right. Now, some people agree and disagree with this. I believe that you could invoke angels, and you do too. What is the best method for that?
I think the best method, first of all, is purity of intention.
Hmm.
Okay. And by that, I mean that you're not trying to manipulate a situation. When you invoke an angel, you're asking for a message from the divine. You may have in your heart some desire for something to happen. Like I'm invoking this angel because my health is not what I would like for it to be, and I'm asking for some angelic help. Okay. And at the end of that prayer to the divine, I always end by saying this or something better,
Mhm.
so that it's not my will, but the divine will that's actually coming into manifestation. And the angels are comfortable with bringing that message to heaven and bringing the energy back down.
I agree. And sometimes I ask to have my negative energy in a situation lifted and to receive new energy so that I can see it and feel it in a different way.
Right.
And
That's
that
right.
seems to be a way of invoking that gets an immediate answer because I'm not saying I'm missing this or I'm a victim. I'm saying I don't know what to do, but I know this needs to happen within me
Right.
for this to change.
Right. Right.
So a lot of it does have to do with consciousness. And I know you say that angels come from a state of consciousness. And to me, that's obviously higher consciousness, at least the angels of light. Do you have a few tips on how people can put themselves into this place?
Pray, um, meditate, to
Mm-hmm.
think of yourself being an empty vessel surrounded by the protection of light itself, which is the light of the divine, and then allowing that light to fill you so that you are feeling, as you said before, this woman's prayer, every inch of your body is being filled with light and is being cleansed and washed and purified, so that you can be in contact with the light um, particles from the connection of the universe that are
Right.
the same light particles that are parts of the bodies of angels, because we and the angels were made out of light at the same time. And when you think about what they talk about quantum entanglement,
Mm-hmm.
they say that any two things that have ever been together at one time, no matter how far apart they are in the universe by time or space, they still have a resonance, a vibration with each other. And so when you open up and let all the uh, dross fall away from you and just concentrate on the light and concentrate on feeling that vibration of your own light, and then call in the vibration of your light companions, your angels.
So if I recap, it would be to pray or meditate so that we raise our vibrations, to be sure that you're in a pure place and you have an opening for it. And by opening what we've described earlier, whether it was at the meditation group or the angel of the wrecked plane, you have to have an opening for that energy to come into, and you have to be willing to take on more light.
That's right. That's
So
right.
there's a willingness.
Yeah, there is a willingness, because it's not my will but thine. And
Mhm.
so you are trying to say, I'll give you this vehicle and let you use it for the best and highest purpose, you know.
Right.
And
Because
but I will say that it's important to have boundaries in yourself for what you will and will not be able to do. For example, if it's the will of the heavens to save a child, I would prefer not to have to run out into the middle of the street. But if it's necessary, I will. you know,
I know,
but don't put that as, oh, she said she would run out in the middle of the street. You know what I mean?
I do know.
Yes.
So we have to kind of think a little deeper. Like people say, I would give anything to be married. I'm thinking, well, don't pray that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Or I would do anything. You really want to think about too, because that light is going to come in and displace your energy. There's always a part of yourself, whether it's your negative thoughts or someone in your life or something that you're doing that's going to get displaced by the energy that comes in.
Right. Right.
And so that's an important thing. So this can be right or wrong on my part, but I would think we can ask angels for help. We can receive messages. We can receive energy, or we can simply become transformed by their presence. Would you want to add anything to that or elaborate on that?
Oh, I think you've pretty much got it covered.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think those are their primary uh, duties. If you read about them in, let's just say, in the biblical or Islamic traditions, they deliver messages. They come, they deliver messages. You can decide what to do with that message. Um, the angels didn't say to the wise men, don't tell Herod, but they figured it out, because the angel appeared and they were like, oh, this is bigger than we thought it was. So we're just going to be mum and hold that energy and thought to ourselves. The angels didn't tell, the angels told Abraham that God was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, where some of his family lived. And Abraham prayed to save his family members. And the angel said, well, we're just messengers. We can't save them or anything, but we can take the message back to God.
Right.
And so they did. And the message came back, and God said, well, you can go and warn your family members, but don't look back. Which I think is a really good message for any time you're in the middle of a transformation. Don't look back, only look forward. But we know Lot's wife, I'll call her Lottie,
Turned into a pillar of salt.
right, because she looks back.
Hmm.
Um, the angels didn't turn her into a pillar of salt, but she was given the choice and she made the choice.
I think also there's another important point that you've made. I try to tell people if you're working on creating something, unless you're involved with someone else who's creating something, don't tell people about the messages from your angels until they come true. And don't share a lot about what you're creating until it's here. Everybody will see it when it's done.
I think that's really good advice. The Eliphas Levi, who was a metaphysician, had rules. He was called them the four secrets of the Sphinx. And he said they were to know, to have received the information, the consciousness, to know, to will, to say, I will participate in this, and then dare to participate in it. Okay. And then to be silent about it.
Mhm.
So to know, to will, to dare, to be silent. And I think that when I tell people about who are writers and they say, oh, I'm going to write this story and this is how it's going to be and this is what I'm going to do. And it's like, have you written it yet? No. But they are dispelling the energy by
Mhm.
telling someone what it's going to be, and then they don't write it.
Exactly. And one thing I say, and it's true, people don't mean to be jealous, but the people who are closest to you, if they find out you're doing something that you love so much that it's changing your life, they try to block it even though it's not conscious.
Right.
And
That's
that's
true.
not good or bad, it's just part of being a human being.
Yeah.
So, one thing that we haven't come to yet is that angels raise our frequency, and supposedly they are on a higher frequency than we are. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yes. And they're not all on the same frequencies because
Right.
there are levels of heaven. There are nine heavens. And, the archangels are not the highest. They're just
No.
higher up than the angels that are closest to our consciousness.
Right. And then the Elohim is female,
Hmm.
which you don't see a lot of references to that, but it's true, and there's never any explanation of it. But I've always found that to be fascinating.
Yes. Yes.
So, as we're talking about this, when we get to the higher group of angels, do you recommend calling on them or calling on the ones that are closer to the level that we're on?
Um, I would say the ones that the archangels are usually the ones that give us messages up and down, though I think they pass through other hands and go up. Now
That's
there's a lot of stories about this rabbi named Eliezer ben Judah. He lived in Worms, Germany, and he was the person who invented or coined the term angelology. And so he worked with and invoked a number of angels. And he did this through gematria, through sacred number, sacred geometry, sacred intonations. And he was a Kabbalist. This was during the Christian Renaissance in Europe. And so Jews were not really well liked during the Middle Ages. And so, but they thought the Christians who were traveling through there thought that he had some money. So they killed all his family members and beat him up pretty bad because of what he knew about the angels. And it's interesting because the angels, one would think, why wouldn't they protect him? Well, in a way they did. But he realized that you're not to use angels to make yourself invulnerable to your own karmic destiny in a way. And he tells a story about some of his students who were going to a bad part of town, and they, Eliezer said, "Don't go there. It's too dangerous."
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "No, it'll be okay. We've got our angels." And he said, "Don't use the angels for that." Well, they go to town. They're approached by some robbers. They call in the angels. The angels, manage to get them through unscathed, and they have a good time in the pub and then come back home. They tell Eliezer what they've done, and he said, you have to go back. You've tried to sidestep your karma. You have to go back and don't call the angels. So he sends them back. The robbers meet them again. They don't call the angels, and all but one of them dies. So it's like, okay,
Well, we have our karmic lessons. That's why I keep asking that they show me how to have different emotions and thoughts than what I'm experiencing.
Yes, yes.
And that's a process, folks. It doesn't mean that just because I pray that or I write that or I meditate that it happens right away. I've had some
Right.
things I've worked on for 2 or 3 years because I'm
Right.
stubborn.
Yeah, just because you're a spiritual person doesn't mean you're going to have a life without worry or trauma or loss.
Mm-hmm.
You're still going to have to go through all of those, but it's how you get through them and how you transfer the negative into a positive.
And that's really our lesson with evolution, but the angels do
Right.
help with it. But she's absolutely right. Just because the angels answer you, you can't ask them to fix everything in your life. It won't work.
Right. Or what would be the point of being human and on this earth?
Right. It would be like saying, I want to be able to write in cursive, but not learn anything. Not learn how to really write, just sit down and do it. You would miss
Right.
them. So
Right.
it's time for our break. I've been speaking with Normandi Ellis about her wonderful book about angelic energies. You can find her at normandyellis.com. And we'll talk more about the cultures and how angels feel to us and how they work in our lives. So stay with us. We'll go deeper into this in just a minute. Welcome back. I'm Julia Griffin at onetrueself.com, onetrueself.com. And today's guest is Normandi Ellis, who is the author of many spiritual books. She's talking today about angelic energies. We're talking about the cultures, many cultures that talk about angels, how they feel, how they work, with both real life examples from our lives and then also examples that come from other philosophies and culture. So, Normandi, you were going to tell us about the Mormon angels. So why don't we start with that?
Right. I think one of the things that is so fascinating to me about the Mormon angels is that they are a constant in the Mormon tradition. They have the angels on the tops of the buildings, and Moroni, the angel Moroni, is the one who is said to give the information to Joseph. What's his name?
I can't
Smith.
remember. Yeah, that
Joseph
was it.
Smith.
It was too easy.
Yeah. And so the angels have always been a really big part of their tradition. They have prayed, I'll call it, with angels for many years. Now, there was a story in the news about a sort of renegade couple, David, I think, and Dorothy something, and they were in Cookville, Wyoming, and they went into a schoolroom. They decided they were going to hold hostage everyone in the building, all the children, all of the teachers, and demand $1 million per person. That's how they were going to raise money. And so they load up these shopping carts with explosives and they go into this building and round everybody up and put them in one room and then sit down and say, okay, call your people, wait. We'll wait until the money starts coming in. Well, all the Mormon community gathers around the sides of the roads, and they're gathering around the school, but they're not going in. And so people wait and they wait and they wait. And in the meantime, these children and the teachers are moving slowly toward one corner of the room and just standing there. Now, there's enough explosives inside those shopping carts to blow anything within seven blocks of that school. So there's kind of a standoff, and the students are very quiet and they're saying the prayers slowly and quietly. They're not crying, they're waiting. And the guy has to go to the bathroom, and so he goes out and ties his wife's wrist with the string that is attached to all of the stuff to detonate it. And so he goes out, and just as he comes back in, she rubs her nose, and boom, but instead of the explosives going out as they should have, they saw this ring of light, and then everything went straight up. At that time, in the confusion and the smoke and everything, the children and the teachers ran for the door. They said they were led by these beings of light that said, go this way, go this way, go this way. And of course, the woman died and her husband died in the conflagration, but all of the people in the school escaped. And when they asked them to say, how did you know how to go? And they said, well, this angel came and told me. Every one of them said they had angels come and tell them, and that angels stood around the bombs, and then other angels came and led them out. And they said, well, what did those angels look like? Well, they described guys with beards, women with their hair up like mine, and their family members start going through these books and see that these are pictures of their ancestors who led them out. And so that begged the question, the angels protected them. The ancestors led them out. Are ancestors angels? I don't think so, but they live on the same plane, and they work with the angels to do what needs to be done in order to take care of us. And I think that that's a really good example of how the energy on that astral plane works, and the fact, that they're so used to talking about angels and being in the presence of angels in their services that the angels were easily ready to come and assist them.
I agree, because I know too, when I've been at a low point, often I'll dream of my grandfather or my father or my great grandmother, and it'll be such a vivid, happy, wonderful dream that it's impossible for me to go back down where I was before.
Right.
They emanate this high energy or this light, and obviously it takes many more physical forms in a dream than, say, a visitation from a higher being, but it still works.
Yes, it does.
Now, one of the things that we were talking about during the break was that I had a client whose very dear friend, I think they had been friends for 50 years. Her friend had been put into a nursing home. She didn't know what was going on. She was clearly moving in the direction of death. And she said, please do something for her. And I said, all I can think of to do is to call her angels and ask them to come and make a circle around her. And she died within 24 hours. And we were talking about the angel of death, which personally I think that lady was lucky, but it was certainly not my intention. I wanted her to feel safe and loved. But the angel of death sometimes comes too when we call on angels.
Right. There's this story in one of the books of Apocrypha that's been taken out of the Old Testament. And I cannot remember the person's name, but she is impoverished. Her children have died uh, in poverty. Her husband is dead. She's physically ill, and she's sitting, uh, trying to figure out what to do. And an angel comes to her, and she asks, "Are you here to heal me?" And he says, "No, I'm the angel of death." And she smiles and says, "Oh, I've been waiting for you, you know, and that's the healing. Death
Mhm.
is the greatest healing, and there are very few people that pass into spirit who do not experience some level of uh, interaction with angelic beings
Mhm.
and ancestors.
Right. So there's that light, there's an angel, there's a lifting into a higher vibration, actually, I would say.
Right, right.
And so in many ways, it's a gift.
Yeah, it is. It is a gift. Now, some of them, there's other stories where there's a king who's out riding his horse and he's not ready to die and he's just overlooking his land and his kingdom. And this beggar comes and grabs his horse's bridle and tries to pull him down. And so there's this struggle, and the king says, "Let go," you know, and he says, "No, I'm busy. I'm going on. I'll see my family later, but I've got to go right now." Then the beggar goes, "Bend down. I have something to tell you." And so he leans down on his horse and he whispers in the man's ear, "I am death." And then the minute he says it, he rolls over, falls off his horse, and that's it.
Mm.
So the Islamic tradition of the angels of death is also interesting because there are two of them and they come in pairs. And there's a story about a sheikh, a holy man, and the angels of death appear to him and begin to question him, like, do they question him about his spirit. Do you know the name of the most holy? And the man says, "You come here, where have you come from?" And they said, "We have come, from far away from the land of heaven, and we want to know if you know who the angels are." And the man says, "Well, if that's where you've come from, that's where I've come from." And then he slaps them and says, "Go back until you know their names."
What an interesting story. That's completely different.
It is completely different, but I thought, oh, you know, that's a good one to put in the book.
So, how accessible do you think angels are? I mean, I think since I started focusing on them, they've become more and more accessible to me, like anything. If you put your mind on it, you get information about it.
Yeah, that's right. Meister Eckhart said that they are no further away than a thought, that angels are forms of thought, they are forms of consciousness. And as we were talking about earlier, lifting your vibration up to that level of thought and consciousness invokes them. You don't have to ask them for anything, you just have to sit in their presence and be grateful.
And it
Yeah.
changes all the vibrations around you. For
Yes,
those of you who haven't experienced it, that's a good thing to start asking for daily. And so, in this way, that's how they help us help our individual lives and our planetary lives. And the planet itself is from that raising of consciousness, I would think.
right, right. The stories that we hear about Edgar Casey, his prophecies all came from the angel Michael.
Hmm.
And Michael is the great protector of the planet, of all peoples and every community. But at some point, one of the people in his group said, well, we would like to hear from another angel. And so Casey begins to channel this angel Haliel, and Haliel begins to prophesy about how the world will end.
Oh, I remember that. New York was underwater.
And the people said, oh, send him back. We don't want to talk to him. We'd rather talk to Michael. So, yeah, I thought that was interesting. The angels will tell you the truth, you
Yeah.
know.
And that's sometimes people don't want that. So if you're going to ask a question and you want the answer, be sure you want the answer, is what I'm saying.
Right, right. And then there's always that question, if I tell you the answer, what are you going to do with the information?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to
Because
change
sometimes
your
it can limit you. I know as a child, I would dream about the future all the time. And I finally asked not to have those dreams anymore because they would upset me and I wouldn't know what to do. So I said, if it's positive, I'm happy to dream about it. If it's a conflict or a difficult situation, it makes me more upset than I think I would be encountering it. So unless it's like an emergency thing to save my life or someone else's life, I don't want to know anymore. And they went
right.
away.
Yeah, I think that's important. And I think it's also important that if you begin to have those kinds of dreams and you have them, over a period of time, you can say, okay, I see this. Now show me what I'm supposed to do with this information. And if I can do anything to warn people, to provide protections for my relatives, tell me what I need to do, you
Right.
know?
Because I don't want to know otherwise.
Right, right.
And so I think that's an interesting point that we're coming to is, you talked about having boundaries. We need to think about what we want to know and what we don't want to know.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
Because knowledge can be really useful or knowledge can be a stopping point. And I think part of having wisdom is recognizing the difference between the two.
right. The Zoroastrians, as I mentioned before, had good thought, bad thought, you know, and each one was a counterbalance to the other. So learning how to use the spirit of truth as opposed to the druge, or that would be considered like the little devil of lies or deceit. You know, I want to know the answer. Don't send me a druge. Don't tell me a
Yes.
pretty story.
Right.
You know,
And nowadays I ask sometimes, give me the feeling or give me insights about what the world would look like if it were in a better place, because that gives me a lot of hope.
yes, yes, I like that. I
And then
like
I'll
that.
have, pictures of huge trees and there's more open space and people are not so afraid of animals or life. And that's a happy way.
Yes, yes.
And so lately, I guess since 2020, that's something I ask pretty often is, let me see life in a better way. Or if we were in a higher vibration, what would it look like? Because I figure if I'm focusing on that vision, I'm at least emanating it.
Hmm. Right. And I think too, when we do certain metaphysical ceremonies, like through the full moon, and
Hmm.
we are praying to raise the vibration and the energy of those around us, and we're also trying to do that for the world. Let's raise the vibration of the world.
Hmm.
Let's say a sacred prayer for the power of discernment, and to try to, anytime you ask for something for yourself, you should also ask for something for the world, you
Right.
know.
And
Like, I would like
I'll tell
wisdom.
you a funny story about that is I had two classes in completely different locations, both in person. And we would pretend like we all had $10,000. We are giving it to the person next to us. The person on the other side was giving it to us. For one group, they must have really imagined it because everybody would have more money the week or 2 weeks after that class. The other one, nothing happened in it. And I thought, they really don't want to share.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I just thought that's hilarious because how can one group get so much money from the same exercise and the other one doesn't? So when you just want to keep it for yourself, you don't get as much as you would if you shared it.
Right.
at least on
Right.
a metaphysical level, I think.
This is true.
So, what else can we tell people about angels that you would want them to know? I think another thing you said is that they can appear in any form.
Yes, they can. Um, in biblical references and Judeo-Christian tradition, they appear as human, but they have all throughout history been given wings, shown as, and I think the wings, let's think of the wings as symbolic, as a way of telling us that they can be anywhere in an instant.
Hmm.
They fly faster from place to place, from one side of the universe to the other. Um, but we do often see those images of feathers. I had a car accident at one time, and I managed to get out of it. And as I stepped out of the car, this white feather came down, right in front of me. And I was like, okay, thank you, because that was an angel that was with me to keep me from being harmed. So it's, even though it's a symbol, it's real. They appear winged, they appear
Hmm.
in human form, and they appear like the wheels within wheels that we hear within Ezekiel, the geometric shapes. They appear as, I like to think when I'm looking at those pictures from the NASA Hubble Space Telescope, or the James Webb Telescope, that I'm looking at angels, you know, and I can see their wings and their being, and it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful. The stars are so amazing. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's kind of like a world that we all want to be in. And an easy way to begin with that would be to study angels, to realize that that culture is worldwide, goes back in time, probably goes forward in time, but our perception is limited there. And they're there to help us.
right, right. That's the operative thing. They're there to help us. They're there
Mhm.
to protect us, and they're there to alter our consciousness.
And
You
that's
know.
really what we all need right now,
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
that altered state of consciousness where we go higher. When you were talking before about how the different hierarchies could help the earth, I got such a thrill and I thought, this is fascinating because we're calling on hierarchies of angels to lift the earth's vibration. And yet I'm feeling the divas and the beings of the earth respond at the same moment.
That's right. That's right.
It's all interconnected and it's all moving forward in that way.
Right. And they don't just live up in space. I mean, as you say, the devas are here. They're part of the natural world, just as the gods and goddesses of the ancient Egyptians are part of the natural world.
And these are all things that we can contact, that we can find out about, that we can
Yes.
move into deeper alignment with. And it's a
Right.
lot better than watching the news, folks. If you want to take that hour and put your consciousness somewhere else, and this might be a good way to go.
This
Instead
is a
of
good way to go.
worrying about everything, go there.
Right.
So if you had a wish for the world as far as angels are concerned, what would that be?
I wish that each person would, in their meditations, find a way to be in contact with an angel of light and joy, and to ask that angel what they can do that day to spread the joy and spread the love.
That's a beautiful wish. And I just thought of something when you were saying that. When I first started communicating with the angels, I would ask for something. It would be like, zap, okay, you're over here. And I'd go, oh no, I can't deal with it. So I've asked to have changes come in whenever possible, lovingly, gently, and joyfully.
Exactly. Right.
Because you may think you want a whole nother life, but I promise you don't want it tomorrow. You want to ease into it and develop yourself and let your personality and who you really are get aligned to that. Or that's my thought anyway. You may have a different
Yes.
belief.
Right.
How long did it take for you to write all of this? It's quite a scholarly work.
Well, I was, at the time I was getting my PhD, so I was doing a lot of research. It was a heavily researched dissertation, and took me about 2 years. And then thank God for interlibrary loan.
That's the best thing in the whole world is
I know.
interlibrary loan.
And then I went back and said, okay, now I have the information, but I want to be able to put it in a way that's more beautifully expressed, that's not frightening, that's not confusing.
Mhm.
And so I asked the angels to show me ways to do that, and they did.
And it's
And
certainly effective because, I mean, I'm familiar with all these cultures, but I didn't know that so many of them had angels, like Vedic philosophy, for example. I wasn't aware that those were really angelic presences. But the way that it's written, I could just go like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
right.
Probably going to end up reading your book at least 3 times because there's too much information in it to get it on the first go round.
Oh, yay. And I love the peacock angel. Just before we go, I know we're running out of
Mhm.
time, but that is one that I think we have not spent enough time thinking about because the peacock angel has a resonance with the Vedic tradition. Um, but it is from a culture, the Yazidis, who are being slowly exterminated
Right.
by, the ISIS and so on. Not the goddess, the group. And we have to preserve those people we love who have beliefs in angels that may not be exactly like ours, but our spiritual contact. So anyway, and learn about the Yazidis. I think that that's a really interesting.
Okay, so that was so much fun and it was wonderful. Please share your website with our listeners and tell us about any upcoming events that you might have.
Oh, sure. So there's normandyellis.com. That's my website. I have a Patreon that you can check out when you go to my website. You can click on the Patreon and sign up for it. I do posts about twice a month on spiritual topics, sometimes astrology, sometimes angels, sometimes tarot, um, sometimes Egypt. I lead trips to Egypt. You can find out about those on the website. Classes coming up. I have a class in the books of the afterlife. So that's Pyramid, Coffin, and Book of the Dead. And these particular classes are about how to write your own spiritual contract. And that's going to be in January.
And that sounds so interesting. I think that
Yeah.
we're almost out of time, so I have some fun and free events coming up. You can sign up for my newsletter at onetrueself.com, onetrueself.com, and you'll get a newsletter and find out about them. I hope you have a wonderful week and a wonderful holiday. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin to master a higher frequency for a new state of mind. Join us next time as Julia takes us deeper into the memory of the moments of light where transcendence and enlightenment emerge. The memory of the jewel of consciousness is always lived within you to tap into waves of energy and create huge changes by imagining the beauty of the vision and desires that are hidden in the heart. Learn to find your way back to nature, beauty, and your own heart, which holds the secrets of your existence and future. To discover more about Julia's adventures, animal communication, and the teachings she brings to every show, visit onetrueself.com. That's onetrueself.com. That's ONE, trueself.com.